Afternoon all. Okay. The Super 16 continues today, Friday the 13th. That's a bit ominous for horror fans. Friday the 13th today. So will we have carnage on the boards? So let's see. Kramnik against Sadler. And what else have we got? McShane against Adams. And we've got Svidler against Rowson. And we've also got, let's minimize these, Anand against Istrasescu. I feel a bit bad for the people from the FIDE Open. I believe they were really exhausted from the FIDE Open. They don't seem to have scored many points between them. So Istrasescu and Sutovsky, I think they must have been exhausted. But again, you know, they would need to be in their top game anyway against their opponents here. But if they were assured like some prize then for qualifying for this, then I guess they don't mind too much being bashed. But it's only rapid chess anyway. It's more on the entertainment side, rapid chess. So which game shall we take preference here? Okay, I wonder. So Anand game, or I wonder. Kramnik against Sadler should be fun as well. So Sadler's been out of the game for quite a while. He's recently come back. I wonder if Kramnik might take theoretical trendy theoretical opening line. But in the previous game he played against Rowson just a sort of King's Indian attack. I didn't realise King's Indian attack is so much on the rage until recently. Even games from the FIDE Open, there have been a lot of King's Indian attacks. I thought, you know, when I was watching like Hennigan in the FIDE Open, an ex-British champion, not this year but in previous years, you know, he was using King's Indian attack. Norwood King's Indian attack. You know, it's quite a good system, and it was a system which Bobby Fischer was playing in his youth. But it's a really good system. I suppose if it's good enough for Fischer, even when Fischer was young, I think he saw something in it that it was a good way to get out of the opening without too much damage and to play the middle game and end game. Okay, so let's see. So who's doing best? There's 4 groups I've noticed on that have been ordered by points on. I'm just getting my iPad to tell you what I mean. On the excellent site, sometimes I use chessgames.com. They've got the ordering by points in the various groups. By the way, I hope the boards are okay. You can see the time underneath the relay time. Hello, mate Dogswee. So you know one of the Swedish players who scored 4 points. Cool, actually 4.5. Good. So there's 4 group, you know, Group A, B, C, D, and so who's leading Group A? So Group A is Adams, Anand, McShane, and Istrasescu. In Group B, it's Kramnik, Rowson, Svidler, and Sadler. Group C, Gelfand, Nakamura, Jones, and Polgar. Group D, Caron, Howell, Short, and Sutovsky. Now today, what's happened? So Kramnik is playing Sadler, McShane is playing Adams. If we go to the official site on that. So groups A and B is round 5. So we're in round 5, I think. So groups A and B mixed together. I think they might have soon. They're going to start very shortly. They should be starting very, very shortly. The moves have been played. So this is called round 5 actually. I should sort of retitle this for round 5. Am I surprised Anand has done well? No, he's been always very good at blitz and rapid chess. Anytime control. As a grandmaster, I mean, when he was first approaching to be world champion for the first time, he was known to be, you know, really super quick in his long games. So this is natural territory, blitz and rapid. So how did it go last night? I had to play in a club match. Felt a bit gutted actually, having to go in this club match, which the team lost anyway. I think I managed to win, but just about. So there'll be a game video on that. But game to Bishop Stortford. But yeah, was it? I guess I missed out on some excitement last night. Was it mega exciting? The games from 6 o'clock. Did anyone watch the games yesterday? 6 o'clock. Previous round. So we've got groups A and B here mixed together. So that's why we've got Kramnik from group B playing Sadler. No, it's getting the logic wrong here. No, but they're both in group B. McShane is in group A and he's playing group A. So they're all just playing each other in their own group at the moment. Pardon me. Zvidler against Relson. Yeah, same group against same group. Anand against same group. Against same group, yeah. They're just in the same. They're playing players that are in their original group at the moment. Okay. The Hertfordshire Chess League, you can either have 2 different time limits for adjournments or playing on the night. He wanted the slower game, so it's like 30 moves in an hour and a quarter. And he got very short of time and blundered actually before. Actually, I shouldn't kill the suspense. I'm going to do a video on it soon anyway. But yeah, I was a bit lucky he blundered anyway. 35 moves in an hour and a quarter, then 15 moves for every 7 moves. But it would go to either adjournment or adjudication at around 10:30. That's about 3 hours in. Anyone looking forward to the new, anyone ECF here? ECF gradings? I'm wondering, there's only a few games that have been played between July, for me, and December. I don't know how active any of you are, but if there's only a few games that have been played, I'm hoping my grade will go up a bit for the January. McShane against Adams, we've got a game. So what's the score position on these guys? I'll just check the score position. So in this group A, this is a group A battle. Anand is leading the group with 3 wins and 1 draw. Adams is second in the group with 2 wins and 2 draws. I think he really needs to beat McShane today to make sure he's stays in number 2 or can try and overtake Vichy at some point. That's going to be difficult. But neither him or Vichy have lost in their group yet. McShane's lost 2 games, and Strescu's just been beaten up 4 times so far. I think he was just knackered from the Feed Out Open. As far as Kramnik, this other group, Group B, it seems Kramnik, I believe Kramnik's leading. I'm just going to verify that. No. Well, jointly leading with Zvidler is Kramnik. They both won 2. They've both lost 1, and they've both drawn 1. Now Sadler is only he's only lost 1 as well. Actually, he's drawn 2, so he's pretty solid at the moment. You know, he's only been beaten up once, and he's actually won 1. So this should be a good fight in theory from the statistics so far. Maybe, you know, Sadler needed to get into this tournament. Okay, so let's just have a look here at the others as well for a moment before we get our teeth into a position. That hasn't started. So the English refugee, the top 2 from each group, go through to the quarterfinals tomorrow. Yeah. So at the moment, Kramnik really needs to beat Sadler then, because there isn't such a gap between Kramnik and Sadler, is there? According to this, Sadler, is on 5. Kramnik's on 7 with Vidler. So if Sadler could somehow win his game, that would be very interesting. For catching up to go, who's going to go through tomorrow to help catch up, of course. Well, there's 2 people that are definitely out of it at the moment. Mind you, Ralston's been beaten up 3 times. He's won 1 though. But it's Rescue that's lost 4 times from the Feely Open. So was that a fantastic game, Kramnik losing to Sidler last night? I missed out on something there. I had to go to this club match. I don't know, I was hooked into it from a while back. I was committed to it. Oh, this is interesting. Well, they're all kind of interesting in their own right. But, how does this go again? Let's have a look at this again. Bishop b5. What? What? I've not seen this move before. Is this a mistake? c4? Has anyone seen that move before? I haven't seen it here. I don't believe that. I don't believe that was played. Surely not. Smith against Ralston. c4. I've not seen this move before. But anyway, I guess it is a move then. I don't play this system much. I thought they usually take on d7 then play c4. Interesting. Doesn't look anything too amazing now though. Just looks like a Maroczy bind's been set up. Something to bear in mind is a little trick though, because I find that sort of thing quite curious. The double pawns here. I find that quite curious. But okay, McShane Adams. So now Adams is well known to play like the Marshall Gambit, so I guess this is to be expected to avoid the Marshall Gambit stuff, just to play d3. It's playing on a light square grip a bit, and quieter, less theoretical. On the other hand, hasn't Magnus Carlsen been using this as black with very, very good results? It just sort of offers black near equality, it seems, usually when it's played at 2700 levels in normal games. And now this looks like a theoretical debate going on here. It looks a sharp bit of theory in the Nimza engine. Bishop d2. Bishop d2. Okay, I guess this is theoretical. I mean, yeah, my theory is not that hot in these different systems, but let's have a quick. I don't know, should we start looking at a quick. Let's have a quick butchers on this one. Bishop d2. So if knight takes c5, a3 would be pleasant, I guess. Well, it's not actually threatening because we've got that pin. So e3, or maybe just castles. e3. Bishop d7 might be useful for coming in here. No, I don't know. I don't know. Queen takes c5 as well, might be. Let's not dwell on that. So, alright, what's happened here? So, white's just given black an isolated pawn out of this opening. So is there going to be some sort of heavy dark square blockade? It does seem sort of good to try and get a blockade on d4 and later try and get a grip on c5. Okay, b6 has been played here. b6. The bishop's going to retreat if it's not taken to b7. Is that a big deal though? b6 is weakening the pawn chain a bit. Maybe a4, a5. Try and hit that chain later. Isolate a pawn. I wonder what's happening with this. This you just wanted to collect that dark square bishop, and you have a good grip on the dark squares, and black's pawn, isolate queen's pawn. So you see this game has got something in common with the Kramnik game, the isolate queen's pawn. Isolate queen's pawn. Okay, black's got a nice space there, threatening to swallow the bishop with b3. Kind of not swallow the bishop, to kind of imprison the bishop potentially. Bishop, I mean, coming in here would close in the rook. Is this a big deal to allow b3? Because later white can play d4 and bishop d3 and targeting a6. So maybe that's not such a big deal anyway. So knight a4 might be on the cards here. Then knight d4. Right, knight c4 here. b3, there might be knight takes a5. That threatens knight c6. So if queen takes, there's bishop takes b3. If b takes, there's knight c6. So b3 doesn't seem a good move. On the other hand, so McShane has set up a grip here. He's discouraging d5 for a long while. That pressure on e5 has to be sorted out before black can even dream of playing d5 later. If d5 is an idea later. So knight c6. So any d4 from white. Black could start with b takes, I guess. B takes. What does black want to do here? there might be a plan, potentially bishop g5, just taking here, knight e3, and then using that d5 square. Don't know how good that would be. I mean, here, knight a4 and knight d4, just try and get a grip on c5. So knight a4, bishop a7, knight d4. Try and get a grip, you know, taking here. I don't know if that's enough for advantage. Maybe white wants to. What does white want to do there? Queen e2 and maybe rook d1. Just keep an eye on d4 first. And this bishop g4 looks dangerous for that pin. For d4 coming next. Maybe queen e2 is not the right square for the queen. Queen d3 might be interesting. Knight before queen b1, going into a1 later after d3 is covered with rook d1. Get to a1, hyper modern. Queen on a1 here. Because queen e2, bishop g4, we've got d4. We've got a lot of pressure here. Okay, let's have a look at this position. This is hotting up a bit. So bishop b7. Right, so we've got a soft spot here. It's attacked. So king h7 looks normal. Now this chain looks, I don't know if this bishop is not really doing anything. Black's never going to play d5, but this chain, for me, seems on the vulnerable side for a4, a5. What do you guys think about a4, a5 here? There's a downside. I mean, maybe this sort of maneuver hits b3, you know, or threatens bishop takes d4 and knight takes b3. As soon as you play a4, you are weakening b3 a bit. So let's have a look at that. a4, knight d7, a5, knight c5, threatening potentially bishop d4. Oh, he hasn't done that anyway. I just thought that was interesting. White's actually not bothered with that. He's just doing a different plan completely. Rook a d1, but the knight is potentially coming to c5. So keeping the pawn on a2 might be important for that. For knight c5 not to really mean that much. I'm not sure there's any point in the knight coming to e5. It's subject to potentially f4 kick, you know, with f5 potentially. I think white wants to play on this d file anyway, so any f4, maybe e5 as well later tactically. Knight b5 remains a threat for a7 as well. What does black actually do there? a6, because that's like weakening b6. You know, maybe it helps b5 in the future. Maybe that's a bit pointless. Okay, so it's just played actually. Let's get back to the game position. This is the game position anyway. Let's get the right move all around. Magnus Carlsen is not playing tournaments. That's not Avron. I think he's celebrating being world champion. So knight c5. What can we do here? We can try and torture black on the d file, maybe like this. Is that torture knight g4? No, the bishop's just stepped back from h6, so that's kind of unlikely. Knight c2 though, what would knight c2 do? Knight c2. I'm not sure about knight c2. Will that move that h4? Is that crazy? Maybe later. Bishop here. h4 trying to soften the black king up. Because the knight has gone. Bishop h4. Queen d7. Ooh, he's targeting e7. And now if e6, we've got the juicy knight f6 check, winning the dark square bishop and probably the game. There's also d6 is weak. So what do we do about e7? I suppose we just play rook e8. I don't think there's any immediate kill after rook e8. It's good the bishop's covering f6 because otherwise we might have a tactic like this in principle for knight f6 check. Not possible at the moment. So actually the other rook was used to protect e7. This looks very comfortable for white because any e6 there's knight f6, right? So this knight has to be tolerated, it seems. Black wouldn't want to like take here because this looks like a very favourable structure. And also we'd have knight c6 potentially to intensify pressure on e7. But how does white actually improve the position here after rook e8? h3. Well, it's changing the structure. Any bishop d5, we're changing the structure to be more pressure on e7. And white will also have knight c6 later. This looks uncomfortable. Gives white an easy plan to gang up on e7. But for white, what does white actually do though to improve this position? Let's look at the others for a moment. Oh, I mentioned this plan. I mentioned this plan earlier, and it's actually being played. Cool. So queen d3, not queen e2, but queen d3. So we could head back here to a1. I know that might look a little bit crazy, but it kind of is very useful sometimes on the diagonal and keeping a blockade on the d pawn. What about the exchange sack here? Bishop takes g7. I guess it doesn't do anything. We've got bishop h6 to threaten mate. f6. Rook takes. Oh, no, surely something like this. That's no good. knight d4. Possibly taking and then knight e5 or something. Okay, so knight e6 has been played here. What do we do about this knight? Put it back here or here? Yeah. Could go to e3 later. Basically, everyone, you say ed5 and e6 would be a dream for black. Would it? d6 is weak. Surely we just played takes. Yeah. If black takes here, knight b5. Or actually not knight b5. Just knight c2 or something on d6. We've also got d8 covered. There's no rook d8, so d6 is a problem. Wouldn't have thought that's a dream for black. Let's get back to the game. So knight takes knight e3. Knight e3. I think here knight g4 might be interesting. Just wondering about this sort of thing. To provoke h5. Because that's knight, because of this thing, that knight can't actually be challenged with like an f5 or anything. So I think this plan is interesting. Or even putting the bishop here, because this bishop's tied to h6, so getting the bishop there to force e5, to encourage e5. So I think this bishop looks likely to be rerouted to e3 or d4. b5 in the meanwhile, trying to break this Moroxy bind. And there was rook c1 possible. Rook c1. Or, hang on, we got a tempo gainer. a7 is a tempo gainer. So just taking bishop f2. And if black doesn't want to lose a pawn, okay, no, he hasn't done that. Rook c1. Blimey, how comes 138 of you are here? Is this Popular Friday or something? Oh, hi, welcome everyone here. Is this really 138 watching this? Oh, blimey. Okay, please like the video if you haven't already. Flattered so many of you watching this. Okay. So this is McShane against Adams. For those that want to recap, it was a Roy Lopez anti-Marshall system with d3, and this bishop e6 looks like a Magnus Carlsen sort of move. He plays this system with black. White wasn't tempted to give up bishop for knight there, so we have this position very complicated strategically. Not a single pawn has been taken yet in that game. We have this hyper-modern-esque game here with Kramnik getting a queen to a1 from Areti. So Areti would be proud. So Areti opening, hyper-modern, isolated queen's pawn. Queen, I think, had to go via this route because e2 there was bishop g4. Queen heads to b1, a1 soon. But so they're wanting to get rid of the dark squared bishop. You'd think actually that's in white's favour potentially, because you would get a greater dark square blockade if we can get rid of this dark square bishop. Is this playing into white's hands, this dark square bishop exchange? The grip is strong, but is there counterplay for black? Here, knight d3 immediately threatened now. Blimey. Ah, 144. Okay, okay. So knight b4. So knight d3 seems threatened. How does white handle that? It looks uncomfortable, actually. If we play, let's have a look at this. How do we handle this threat here? If we played, I mean, this looks awkward to handle, actually, so maybe Matthew Sadler's got a point. I don't know. Can we just... What do we do about this horrible threat? Knight... If we play... Let's just start with, as an example, what can happen if we just try and do that. You know, we could lose like this, couldn't we? With knight takes a2. That looks as though that's not what white intended. So, no, he's played it, needed to play an accurate move. He's taken on c8. So to take is not always a mistake. It needs to solve a particular problem here, which it does. So now, can we not just kick this knight? I don't know. This looks active for black, but with the isolated queen's pawn, it's this constant debate: the dynamism versus the structural issues. If we played like a3, isn't there just rook c2? Or I don't know. Is there queen e5 in this position? Let's just go with this for a moment. This position, we're covering d3 as well. The knight going back. Can white just get a better ending here? He hasn't done that. He's done knight d4. He's simply covering the c2 square with knight d4. Very good. So it doesn't matter about knight d3 apparently. Maybe just queen e2. Queen e2. The knight would have to go back, but we've got this dark square blockade. But black for the moment seems to have a good play at the moment. Is this really going to be extinguishable, this play on the c file? It looks quite interesting there for a moment. That rook seems quite active. I think this is a dangerous position for white. You might also consider queen a3 here just to put pressure to make sure white's not going to play rook c1 anytime soon. I think that could be quite pleasant for black, this position. I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you think Matthew Sadler's got enough counterplay here for the isolated queen's pawn? Okay, let's see. That's interesting. So knight d3. Do we really have to go with the knight to d3? What about, say black just does queen c7? Can we not do that? I don't know. a3, knight d3, going like this. I think there seems to be some counterplay here. There might even be a move like knight. I don't know, it doesn't do anything. It's pretty solid for white though, with that knight on d4 for the moment. Let's have a look at some others then for a moment. So it's Vidler against Ralston. So this, something very exciting has happened here. What is going on here? Rook c1, h5, okay. Queen b6, bishop g5, bishop a6. Oh, he's just attacking the queen. And now the queen was attacked again here. It looks as though a7 is a bit vulnerable. So, for example, queen c6, could we dare consider bishop takes a7 here? Is that cheeky? We would have passed a pawn in the future. Oh, hang on, there's bishop c3. Doesn't work, does it? There's a pin. No, hang on, there's a pin. No, we just take and then take on b4. Queen c1. Get a bit crazy. Queen c1. It's not really necessary, all this, is it? Mind you, there's rook b6 coming up there. So anyway, actually it seems as though a7 hasn't been neglected. Queen a8. So now rook here and queen's. So white's torturing black on the queen side, it seems, a little bit. Okay, so how can actually queen a5? There's always bishop c3 though. No, there isn't bishop c3. Hallucination, pardon me. So queen a5. What do we do with queen a5 in this position? We're going to lose a7. Are we losing a7? Anyone got any ideas here against queen a5? Queen a5. What does black do? Where's the counterplay? Let's try giving up a pawn. No, we can't give up a pawn without giving up the bishop. Bishop here. Alright, let's see what bishop b5, you think? Bishop b5. Yeah. Queen takes. Queen takes, rook takes, I guess. Maybe there's some play here for black. What black do? Rook a8. That's the engine evaluation, this. It's better for white here, but is there any other moves after queen a5? Now bishop b5 is the suggested move here, from an engine point of view. It looks to be black's in trouble. I don't think this is a gambit that was desired from earlier when black was playing b5. So let's go into this a little bit. Queen takes. Okay, it's difficult. We're on e7 as well here, so we can't really neglect e7, can we? I think white's better anyway. I think he's likely to play queen a5 and go for this and try and neutralise the counterplay after winning that material. So here it's still pretty quiet on game 2. This Shane Adams. What's happening here? It seems as though black's got an interesting position here. It seems as though there's counterplay just at first glance for black. That knight doesn't seem at all bad on c4, or is it? Is it possible white's just going to gang up because he's protected a3, so he's preparing b3 maybe. Let's play rook c1, potentially b3, but black's got b4 here to consider. That looks quite dangerous, actually. What do we do here? This looks as though, okay, the knight's holding up things at the moment, so rook c2 as an example might not be losing straight off the bat. This knight's taking care of things, I guess. If we went a4, maybe just take. He has played b4. What about this position? What would we do here? Is black really threatening so much damage? What about something like e4, trying to just undermine the knight at some point? So it's something like rook c1 with the idea of e4, trying to sort of play knight takes e6 after and bishop c4. If black could sort of put pressure on b2. So I think black does seem very nice here. I don't think it's that easy to get rid of this knight on c4. It is helping for b4 pressure. I think the clock time seems to indicate that white's had some difficulties in getting this position. So I think actually this looks, I think this could be the first game that Istrescu threatens to beat someone. Actually, he hasn't won yet. This looks dangerous. It looks very critical. I don't know what engines probably think are different, but let's have a quick check what the engine say here. As though it's equal. It looks difficult to play. If we played like this, then like a4, why is that harmless? Apparently we can just take here. Oh, then taking on e6, taking on c4. If taking here, I would just take here, and then, alright, king a3, okay. So this could all be a problem with c4 being loose ultimately. This kind of aggression could lead to a problem. Pawn. So black's got to be careful with this. Could be playing into white's hands. It seems a4 could be weakening, getting a weak pawn on c4. So it's provocative, a little bit provocative maybe, but he's got that nice blockading knight. So black's got to be careful not to be too optimistic. But how does actually black improve the position without being tempted for a4 here? Interesting. So okay, so let's go back to what's going on here. Queen d3. Well, isn't a3 on here? There's d5. What's going on here? This seems quite tactical. Okay, so queen takes a3. There's Let's imagine queen takes a3, queen takes d5, the knight's loose. Knight c3.
Check.
Trying to check. Oh, actually, we're on the rook. Alright, so queen d3. What do we do about d5? Seems a bit analogous to Vishy Anand's game, that the isolated queen's pawn is leading to a bit of trouble for black if black hasn't got the tactics. It seems, you know, these pawns can be vulnerable. So what do we do about d5 here? Let's imagine queen c5. That looks fairly sensible. I wonder about just b4. Queen c4 and just rook d1. Alright, okay, so actually knight c3 has been played. So if bishop takes, I guess this pins too much. Or is it? What's black's idea here? Queen d7. Surely not. Actually, just. Is there anything like bishop c4 here? Can this be taken? If the rook's got to be careful about queen g6 if the rook's not protecting g6 here. So like this, disaster. Yeah. He's ignored that d5 for them. He's protecting a3. Maybe that's the idea, that a3's loose here. So maybe that was a threat now. a5. Okay, what about just a5. Bishop d5 here. What would be the refutation of that? What does the engine think here? The engine thinks bishop d5 is pliable. If knight takes, queen takes. Let's follow this. Queen takes. Rook d1. White's only slightly better. So an exchange of prisoners, as Nimzovich would sometimes say, when both sides are exchanging each other's weak pawns. So the exchange of prisoners, d5 for like one of these, would lead to about an equal position apparently. But so we had b takes a5. Queen c5, not wanting to go for a3. Rook a1. Things are livening up here. What about queen takes a5 now? Is that possible? So holding on to d5. Any rook c1, there's knight e2 check. You know, rook c1, there's knight e2 check. So that knight looks okay. Maybe the king would want to move out of the way of things here. If we played h3 with the idea of king h2, would that harm white's position or improve it? And queen takes a5. I played rook a6. Much better. Much better than queen a5. If he takes here, he's got pressure now, already doubled pressure on a3. And the knight's also controlling a4. So maybe Kramnik's going to be under pressure with this. Rook c1, we've still got knight e2 check as a tactic. So taking on here, this a pawn could be under scrutiny. That looks cool to play rook a6. I don't know, I think white's under pressure now. White's a bit under pressure. Surely. this knight's actually controlling all the squares virtually. Not this one. Okay, bishop f3. The king maybe is coming to g2 pretty soon. Maybe here. Yeah, because taking, we can always take on d5 after. So let's have a look at this position. This looks unpleasant for black because of that pin of the knight. Threatening queen takes g6 check. There's no checks. The king's much better on g2 away from the checks. That looks pleasant for white. And actually it's a double attack. b7 and g6. So forget taking on a3 for the moment. But what about b5? Is that possible? Just to try and play b4 and try and use this pin. That gets that out of the way of the bishop a little bit in these variations. b5 has been played. So it looks as though b4 would be very handy. If we get in b3, b2, that's the end of white. So that was an amazingly powerful move, that rook a6 actually, for a quick, pressure on a3 instead of queen a5 when Sadler played that. So what's happening here? This could be trivially won for black on queen d4. We just take and then b4. Looks as though the bishop's not having any part in the conversation here, and there's actually just b3 and b2. So white's got to be very careful. What does he do about b4? I wonder. Does anyone have any ideas? Is white? Everyone agree white seems to be worse here because of this b4. Has Kramnik actually lost a game in this tournament yet? I don't think he has. Well, no, he lost to Zvidler. Pardon me, he lost to Zvidler. Okay, let's have a look just quickly while that's been a bit short on the clock as well. Let's have a look at just quickly what's happening here. Oh, things are pretty interesting as well there. Let's stick with the Kramnik game for a moment to see how this problem's solved. Draw for Anand, was it? Was it a draw for Anand? No, it still seems to be in progress. Yes, it looks as though it's pretty drawish there. Yes, it looks pretty drawish there. I can't imagine white having a major winning plan. Unless g4 at the right moment. Could be tricky. Could be trying to gain time on the clock. As it's drawn, it was officially drawn, that one. Okay. So that was a Nimzo engine with I thought white was under pressure, so black wasn't tempted with a4. He played b takes, yes, getting rid of any potentially weak pawns. The king does come to a3. That was mentioned as a possibility with this drawish rook and pawn ending, and that was agreed drawn, so we'll put that game away. g4 has been played here. Let's go back to this. So g4 was played. It looks as though, is that potentially weakening white's king? It was just kind of ignored with h4. I think somehow the isolated queen's pawn has been a triumph in this position. Black's got this b4 imminent threat. What does white do? Right, b4 here. What's the idea now? I suppose queen. No. A takes, just A takes, pardon me, just A takes attacks the queen. So that's not very good here. What about d4? We have this position. I wonder. So b4 now, the queen's protecting the rook, so it could just be taken. We don't want to play b4, so he has parried b4. Any other plans for black here? Also, rook c1 would seem possible now without losing a3. So white potentially is threatening rook c1. So I think that's why he's put his queen back. So rook c1 can be answerable with rook takes a3 there. So the queen's gone back here. So there's no b4 at all. The queen, rook's gone there. Right. So now what about, so rook c1, there's rook a3. What does white want to do? What does black want to do? In fact, it looks as though rook f6 might be something on the cards later. Queen b2. There's always rook c1 though, if ever the rook leaves the a file, rook c1. So I don't know, how does black actually make progress? If black's the one that's wanting to make progress. He has to try and catch up Kramnik in the group to qualify, I believe. Only the top 2 out of the 4 go through tomorrow's play. So how does black make progress here? He needs something quite clever, I think. Or is it possible? What do the engines say? Okay, rook a4's been played, but what do the engines actually say here? As though it's equal. Oh, as though it's equal. Actually, it's giving d4 as an idea, or f6, or queen c6. Or rook a3 there, actually. So Kramnik's probably not going to neglect the a3 pawn like that. Okay, so don't know. d4 at the right time when Kramnik's short on time. Oh, it's been drawn. It's just been a green drawn. That's a shame. Oh well. So that one's drawn. Let's put that away. Okay, so we've got this position. Svidler against Ralston. What's been happening here? So opposite coloured bishops. Doesn't rook e7 check or sort of force king f5?
Check.
if this is the position. That looks as though pretty drawish, surely. So maybe not rook e7. So what happened here? So Ralston got out of a tricky position, it seems. Let's go back.
Check.
So he had this bind, Roxy bind to deal with, and I thought there was pressure on the queen side at some point. He's going to lose a pawn for not much. Round about here. So what happens here? Bishop d4. Ah.
Check.
Right.
Check.
So we get this position. So rook e7 has been played.
Check.
So king f5 forced. Is the idea rook takes e8? Surely, yep. We play b6 here, out of interest. Actually, this might be quite promising. b6. We're threatening now b7 immediately. So rook b4, say rook e6. Say this position. I mean, just h4. Surely that's drawish. Let's go back here. What does the engine think about this? Because judging from recent rook and pawn endings in the FIDE Open, rook and pawn endings are extremely tricky indeed, some of them. It seems the engines think white's doing very well, in fact, here. Rook e6 is played. That was apparently one of the better moves. So, okay, it depends on a few things here. h4 check was played.
Check.
Obviously, it'll be undesirable to have this position with the king terrible. But was that one of the best moves? Well, that's okay. So h4 check.
Check.
So king f5. Let's imagine king f5. Rook c6. Let's go with this. Black try g5. hg. King takes. He's trying to get the king over there. It's about equal apparently. There's no big special thing, it seems. It's about equal. Okay, so I think it looks dangerous to take on h4. Let's just test that. There's enough. What does white do? b7 is rook b4. Is this refuted in some way? Apparently rook c5 check.
Check.
Is big advice. He's played that. This would be a big refutation for rook b5. Oh no! I told you, rook and pawn endings are the most underestimated thing. going in chess, I think. I'm absolutely convinced of that recently. That rook and pawn endings have terrible tricks to them. White's winning this now. I thought it was just a draw. I think everyone else did. And now this horrendous little trick to get the rook behind the pawn has been played. And I think it's a winning king and pawn ending coming up here. It's just winning, isn't it? With king, say f4 here, and we've got a winning king and pawn ending. It's terrible, 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 terrible. They're the most tricky things imaginable. I think it doesn't help when people try and assign them to technique, so you're sort of embarrassed to even talk about them, you know, and state an opinion. I think this is a terrible thing about chess, rook and pawn endings, from what I've seen recently. This is just a fantastic... This does seem like a winning transposition into a winning king and pawn ending now. The king will just be too far away, even though white's a pawn down over here. He's going to mop up these two pawns, and the king's going to be too far away to get back. Oh dear. What? That was a catastrophic blunder. Let's have a look. This position is totally winning, just to confirm that. But there was a catastrophic blunder we've just witnessed. I really think these rook and pawn endings are terrible. Okay, so here black, yeah, shouldn't have taken on h4, but he seems to be in a little bit of trouble there, with g5 being the best move suggested. It leaves the rook behind the pawn, and apparently
check.
Apparently white had a little bit of pressure anyway, coming up like this. So maybe it was tricky anyway, actually, to be fair. But let's go back to the game then. But this seems to be yeah, white's just won. He's just won. Black has just resigned here. In fact, so if king here, we can just take with check, then come back.
Check.
So we do the damage to the pawn chain, we come back, we win this guy, we make steady progress. It's just, black just resigned. They're very, very tricky rook and pawn endings. So that was Zvida needed that to try and qualify for tomorrow. So Kramnik against Sander was drawn. McShane against Adams, I think, is this still in progress? It seems, is there a clock ticking, or is it drawn? Let's have a look. I think it might have been, it looks as though there isn't too much material for both sides. Was that agreed a draw? Clocks don't seem to be ticking. What about the other game? So we're putting this one away. Kramnik put that away. I suspect it's been drawn. Yes, so we're waiting for the next round. So that was mega exciting. These are very, very exciting. So when's the next round? Is it 3:30? Let's have a quick review on this game, perhaps, for those interested. This game. So it was an anti-martial kind of system. So Adam's playing very solidly with black, even on this time control. Knight takes e4, nice little tactic there for the sort of vulnerable knight on c4. So black has fragmented white's pawn somewhat here with this tactic. But now, symmetrical on this side of the board. Symmetrical pawns. Okay. Okay, so is the next round 3:30? Can anyone just say? I'll try and check. If you like this commentary, please do like the video. We're up to 33 likes on it. Thank you all for coming, and I'm going to carry on. I'm going to carry on for the next round. So I believe it's not too long to wait. Adams won his game. Did he win on time? Blimey. Pardon me. It looks as though there's a 0-1 for this game. As though Adams won. Blimey. What did the engine say about this final position? As though black was much better anyway. With Queen D3. Yeah, it looks as though, coming to think about it, white is under great pressure. So white forfeited on time. But white is under pressure here. Let's see. With Rook D5. So now there's no Rook D1, we've got Bishop takes C3. Yeah, white's pawns are under great pressure. So actually that tactical trick from earlier, when Adams earlier in the game played that knight takes trick for C4, if we just rewind there. I remember Adams actually got me into this idea of the rewind term for chess. Looking at games many years back, he was saying about rewinding, and it got me saying that ever since. So let's rewind anyway. So there was the trick. I mean, white's pawns were fragmented from here. Knight takes E4 trick. And then it came sort of symmetrical for a moment. But it wasn't. It was in black's favour, the symmetry here, because black's pawn is more advanced on C4 than white. So what black's got that extra space to play with, which makes actually the bishop is better with that C4. C3 more of a target maybe. So A4 and C3 the big targets in this position. So white's just defending both of these all the time. Has to defend against things like Rook B3. So it has to be passive against that. Now A5 tortured. Now again A5 tortured. C3 tortured. A5 tortured. But here white forfeited on time. Black is technically better with Queen D3 in this position. If you can have a look at this, Stockfish indicating Queen D3 is better for black anyway. What does white actually do here? It seems, you know, Rook D1, there's Bishop takes C3. If Rook C1, Rook D5, And if we play bishop e1, it looks a bit... Okay, let's play bishop e5 here. We're cutting the king off. We might be coming back for this a pawn. Hitting the rook. I think white's getting squished ultimately with best play because of these weaknesses. -3 here, and they're equal on pawns. Now things start falling off, surely. So things start falling off in this type of position. That's with best play, well, from an engine point of view. So this position is quite tricky, it seems. But so white lost on time, but the position technically is potentially lost. So when does the next game start? I'm hoping it's soon. Oh, the games have been set up. We got Nakamura, one of my favourite players. I call him the Entertainer. It's a nickname given to him by someone on my site called not Capablanca, Capablanca or something like cup of coffee. Anyway, so the Entertainer is there to entertain us soon. Nakamura is apparently playing Boris Gelfand, I think, soon. Or is this completely wrong? No, I might have got this completely wrong. Nope. Might be Boris Gelfand against Nakamura, David Howe against Caruana, Judith Polgar against Garwin Jones, Nigel Short against Sutovsky. We should have these anytime soon popping up. Okay, so interesting stuff. There's apparently a hashtag, if you want to use it for Twitter. There's a Twitter chat going on at London Chess. I'll just type that in. London Chess is apparently a Twitter hashtag tag. Any of you Twitter fans? Twitter's getting extremely high profile recently. Everything's being twittered. Twitter's being used by more and more programs on TV, etc. So, and for chess events, there's hashtags now. So, while we're waiting, I guess we can have a quick review on something, or not. This Vidler-Ralston tragedy, or was it a tragedy? Was white just better? Could just review that quickly if we've got a little bit of time. So what happened there again? Just a quick summary. Oh no, the game's been set up now. I think we're getting the game set up for the next thing, are we? Let's quickly review this. Over here, put that over there.
Check.
So it was a c4. I thought that was a bit unusual, this position. If we had this position, I suppose that's interesting for white, but it wasn't played. So we had this Maroczy bind, and I think apparently white was going to be significantly better though at some point when he got that queenside pawn. We just get to that position winning that queenside pawn. So this bishop rerouting was putting a7 under scrutiny, and it was around about here I thought queen a5 was strong, and actually I think the engine might have as well. Nope, not queen. I wonder what's happening with queen a5. Bishop b5, apparently this is no big deal at all, this position. It's actually better for black after rook b8. That's tricky. I guess the rooks are being forked potentially. Like if we have this position, this rook can't go to a5 because he got bishop c3. And if it goes to a3, that just looks terrible. Bishop b2, in fact. And this position, black's got loads of play and getting a pawn back. Alright, so that was neat how that queen a5, it was avoided totally. So here, knight d3 apparently was a good move, but let's go with Vidler's move then. So this position, very, very tricky indeed.
Check.
To try and win, but he did it somehow.
Check.
Just a pawn up here, opposite coloured bishops. Single pawn up.
Check.
Goes into this rook and pawn ending. And there's a neat little trick coming up with h4. And again, losing that pawn to just try and get the rook behind the pawn.
Check.
With a check.
Check.
It's a winning ending here for white. Okay. Right, let's I don't know, while we're waiting we might as well just check these other ones out, just review. I mean, they've got some sort of technical issue at the moment. Let's review the Anand game again. So English opening, going into sort of Nimzo Indian transposition soon. Bishop g5. So Izrajescu hasn't won a game yet, but he's been losing quite a lot though. But this is the first game he managed to hold against a super GM. Bishop d2. So black having to give up his bishop. And it looks as though white's got a comfortable grip for a moment, but black's got some counterplay here, threatening f2. Getting that dark square bishop back, but still left with that isolated queen's pawn.
Check.
The king going on the queen's side. Delicate play from white to avoid disaster, I think. The knight's holding b3, it's against b4, b3, so it looked quite dangerous here. Now instead of b takes a3, let's just check this position. I think it was slightly better for black. But no, the engine's actually like white here. So let's follow this. King e7. e4. I guess this was vulnerable. This knight on c4. Actually, white could have been getting a significant advantage here, in theory, because of this vulnerable knight on c4. So black did well, I think, to liquidate the weaknesses
check,
We have king a3 here. Things get tricky.
check,
Let's follow this engine
check.
line. So things didn't get to that. Black, perhaps wisely, in the game, played b takes a3 and
check,
we have a much safer position for black emerging. Much safer, where black only has to worry about a5 and d5 like this in this rook and pawn ending. So that was a draw. Okay. So McShane against Adams, Kremnik against Van Sadler. Review this again. Tarash kind of position. The great promise of the isolated queen's pawn. So queen d3, potentially tucking the queen like this. Knight e2. Now I wonder actually about if white had played queen b1 here. Is d4 on the cards? Let's just check this. Oh, actually, have we got some games? Yep, we got some games. Let's load the games. Let's put the Nakamura one for a moment over here. Well, actually, for the moment, let's put boards 1 and 2 to have a quick look until they settle down. Put boards 1 and 2 together. So board 1 here, so both the live positions, board 2. So Queen's Gambit declined from Nakamura. What's happening on 3 and 4? Ah, we've got a dragon. Jones is playing the dragon against Polgar. Judith Polgar. And Short is playing some... Ah, I thought the more fun way would be to gambit with b4. Then c3. But he's played c3 and then b4. Okay, so... Bishop b6, a4 to try and trap the bishop, provoke a6. We got some action already here to check out, get our teeth into. Let's get some. Let's just board up for this one. It looks theoretical for the moment. Catalan territory. So white doesn't mind the exchange of queens.
Check.
It's going to have a bit of pressure on the queen side. You take the king here. You can like do this and rook d1. Maybe. I don't think he wants to take the knight. The knight might want to venture somewhere. Oh, he's taken with the knight. Wow. Okay. Take with the knight. Bishop takes c5. Perhaps white did want to castle kingside like normal. So So knight e3, is that possible? We're just taking on c4. It just takes on c4. Okay, so let's see. How against Caruana? Oh, this is streams down. Shall I mention the stream? I think someone on Tim Waters has mentioned the stream. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't mention. Someone's mentioned about the stream being down. Okay, all right. I'll try and ask basic, like, some observations for anyone that wants to, like, ask questions. But let's. I mean, the games haven't settled down at all yet. Let's see what happened in this opening. How against Caruana? Double fianchetto. Hypermodernism. So the hypermoderns believed you could invite the opponent to occupy the centre, and later you're trying to undermine it. So in this position, though, you've got to factor in, if black can hold that d pawn, it is locking out this bishop from the game. It looks as though black's intending bishop f6 and possibly e5, then possibly knight c7 to e6 could reinforce that d4 pawn here. Okay, so let's see. Polgar, this is very, very sharp theoretical encounter over here in the dragon, Sicilian dragon, one of the sharpest of all Sicilian defense variations. So knight takes d4 and b5. I think it's something like the Chinese dragon or something, this variation. Well, black is not playing a6, it's very fast with a5 and b5. I seem to remember some very, very sharp, entertaining John Nunn games on TV in this variation. In the dragon, he was always seemingly beating the dragon with some theoretical knowledge. This very sharp position here. I think there was one key game which fascinated me where Nunn, he kind of sacrificed his bishop on b3, let it be trapped, because he had some major attack against Mestel. This was many years back. I don't know if that's the case here, that white's got a crushing attack if he just sacks the bishop. If she just sacks the bishop, she is putting the bishop potentially on d5. There's e6. Maybe bishop d5, or just taking on... I think bishop d5 is the intention. Let's have a look at this very sharp position. So let's see, if bishop d5, well, actually, you know, e6, there's bishop b7. And what would happen here? If rook c7, there's bishop b6. And if rook b8, that's interesting. Bishop a6. I mean, things get a bit hairy because we've got all sorts of ideas now in this position. If rook a8, bishop takes b5. If queen a5, then maybe there's other ideas now, like knight, or maybe just bishop takes f6, queen takes d6. Is that possible? Now, this it seems a bit crazy. Maybe this bishop... This is probably theory, and bishop d5 isn't the theory move. If anyone knows the theory of this position... Does anyone know the theory of this position after a4? It's incredibly sharp. Let's have a look at board 1. Gelfand against Nakamura. Wow, what's been happening here? So we'll go back to the start. Queen's Gambit declined, going to Catalan with a pawn sack on c4.
Check.
White playing knight takes d1. Black's trying to sort out this problem bishop. So I wonder, bishop b2 coming next? White's got some sort of pressure here, but it's a symmetrical pawn structure fundamentally. Can black get out of this pressure? Oh, bishop takes f6 has been played here. So yeah, not bishop d5. This is probably all theory, and someone's been playing it before. So if bishop takes f6, I think hg is quite dangerous actually. We can set the bishop here for queen h6 maybe. This would be incredibly dangerous position. So bishop takes f6. Now if e takes, this might be more sensible actually to keep the... oh, it hasn't been played. So bishop takes f6. I wonder about hg here. What does black play in this position? Dangerous position. I think you'll agree this position is very, very dangerous. Mind you, there's a sneaky check that could be played here to drag the queen back. If rook e8 we're mating black like this.
Checkmate.
If bishop g5 check, queen takes, fg, and actually we've got rook f7 on the cards to queen h6 now. We've got rook f7. So this might be a very, very useful resource in this position. I can't see anything else actually. If black wanted to take the bishop. Okay, here though black doesn't want to take the bishop. Black played e6. So now there's actually bishop g5 on queen h6. So queen h6 we've got bishop g5 check, which would be very embarrassing. So that defends against queen h6. Now g takes would favour black, blocking, keeping the lines closed on that h file, and black could carry on the queen side. So this looks to be a very nice move, and it also deprives the bishop of that d5 square. So queen h6 is out of the question because of bishop g5 check. Very sharp tactical position here. Very, very interesting. e5. Wow, things are really hotting up here. e5. So this bishop is being exposed on d7. If bishop takes e5 here, we still have this tactical check to consider. Queen h6, we can drag the queen back,
check,
which could be critical, you know, for like fg. Mind you, we've got d6 here. This could be quite nasty for black, because the rooks could coordinate here against h7. Let's have a look at this position. We're threatening mate, and we've got coordination of the rooks. Very sharp positions indeed, but white seems to be a bit better here. Well, a piece up, so yes. So e5, if d takes, okay, bishop g7 has been played. I wonder about rook takes h7 here. That, I think that might not be dangerous. Okay, queen takes d6 might be more to the point. Just trying to go for this bishop. There's also an idea of g takes and bishop takes e6 potentially. If rook c7, I think we can just play g takes and bishop takes e6. We're crashing through that d file. So what would black play here? If a takes, then not g takes, that would be protecting the bishop. Maybe considering taking here is an idea, just because we're taking on d7 after. There's a check here. All right, rook takes h7 has been played. Rook takes h7. Forget d6. Wow. Very, very tactical position. So offering the bishop. So if now rook h1 would seem dangerous, or rook g7. I think rook h1, because I don't think we want to introduce rook h8 that quickly here as a defense. So instead, imagine we play, maybe this is more to the point, rook h1 to threaten rook takes g7 check, queen h6 mating. Now this is very, very tricky. If fg, for example, can the black king survive? Rook takes check,
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 check.
check.
It looks terminal. This kind of continuation would be terminal for black. Black has played bishop takes e5. This seems mega dangerous. Queen h6 would threaten rook g7 check and queen h7 mating. If, I don't know, bishop f4 check here just seems, as we saw earlier, it seems a bit diabolical as well. Well, here especially diabolical. Is this going to be a Judith Polgar classic? Hack attack. So it looks as though this is an exceptionally dangerous position for black. But Gwen Jones, I thought a dragon expert. Is it really possible his dragon's going to be slayed? Let's have a look here at A takes B. Queen h6 threatens rook h8 check and queen h7 mating. Are we really forced with desperate measures like bishop f4? This does look terminal. It looks terminal. This does remind me of the classic game I saw on TV many years back, John Nunn against Mestal, I think, in the Sicilian Dragon, where Nunn was happy to sacrifice his bishop on b3 in many variations. F takes g6 has been played. Oh, now there's bishop f4 has been introduced. So queen h6, we got bishop f4.
Check.
I don't think there's a queen sacrifice possibility. The king can always step out to f6, I think.
Check.
In this position.
Check.
Nothing going on there. So so black has cleverly introduced bishop f4. If we go rook h8 check,
check,
bishop takes, queen h6. I think there's just queen. Well, there's queen f6. There's other defenses. Queen f6. Okay, so now what does white do to have an attack here? I wonder. Knight d5 is an interesting tactical move for knight e7 check. In fact, that looks quite crushing. Potentially knight e7, but there's always bishop f4 here. So we can play queen takes and bishop f4. And if we sort of have this position, we're going to lose to like b takes if we're not careful. So this bishop f4 is a right pain. I'm not sure it's working here. Now this would be winning for white, I think. So knight d5 is interesting, but it doesn't work. Bishop d5 has been played. Bishop d5. So what of bishop f4? Well, there's rook h8 check all the time. This would be forcing the king in front of the rook.
Check.
So we could play queen takes f4 and it would be mating there. So rook h8, the bishop has to stand to protect h8 now. Now e takes d5, this is more interesting. We're protecting f4. If white just gets in king b1 first, then knight e7 is the major threat. But also king b1 would be useful for queen h6. So we'd have knight e7 and queen h6 as key threats. If we just moved our king, or even just played g3, we don't even have to move our king, just g3. So if this is taken, I think this is big trouble with a knight on d5. If b4, let's examine b4 here. Something like g3. This is very, very hairy stuff. B takes queen h6 would seem... There's a lot of threats here. I know, queen f6. Is that holding? That's holding h8. So if we just play b4 in this position, what does white do here? Forget g3 for a moment. b4. Knight e4 is possible because we're covering the f6 square. If bishop f6, surely check. And then check here
Checkmate.
is mate. We've actually got knight e4. If ed queen takes is winning.
Check.
What an amazing idea. Knight e4 to b4. Amazing. This position. I think Bobby Fischer himself actually visited the Polgars. Maybe he taught them how to slay the dragon at some point. He was a visitor, I'm pretty sure, to the Polgar family in Hungary. So he used to say the dragon was just a case of opening up the H-file and mating. So let's forget b4. I think b4 is pushing it for black, pushing the luck to play b4 here. Queen f6. Let's try knight e4 here to queen f6. So McVin, you said queen f6, knight e4. Right, so then at least we have... Do we have... I don't know what we do here. Do we really allow bishop f4? Check. We can't allow this position. Surely not. We can take here minimum.
Check.
And the rooks on the 7th will win. Surely. The rooks are pretty powerful on the 7th rank. At minimum. Queen f6, knight e4. Alright, should we put queen f6 into I don't know, let's cheat with an engine here. Knight e4 is apparently a good move. Queen f4. Queen f4. Not bishop f6. Let's try bishop f6. So yeah, that's just actually it's a mate in 3.
Check. Checkmate.
Alright, so queen f4. So the idea of queen f4. Apparently this is holding. Yeah, apparently that might be a good defensive idea to play queen f6 here. Now I'm not sure how many defenses are available to black here. Let's just inspect this b4 idea just to verify that was terrible. I thought knight e4 was crushing. Apparently knight e4 is crushing here. So bishop f6 we've got the mates in 4 with check. Because we're covering that f6 square. So not b4. We can rule that out. Queen f6 to f4. Now if we tried, let's just try getting out of the way. I guess king b1 is too slow. White has to sort of try knight e4, I suppose. I think anything else? Are we getting slaughtered with anything else? If we played king b1, that might, apparently this might be okay. King b1. this is crazy. It didn't mention king b1. It mentioned knight e4 like equalizing, and now it's giving king b1. I've just suggested king b1. What's happening here? Rook f7. Knight e4, queen goes back, rook takes, queen takes, knight g5. Apparently white's a bit better. Very sharp position. Very sharp position indeed here. So it seems with best play at the moment, the discovery seems to be queen f6 and then king b1. To avoid queen f4, we might consider king b1. You're saying, why not rook f7? Well, let's have a look. Okay, so you're saying rook f7 here. I think we could just take that. This looks very dangerous for black. Is that the question here? Why not rook f7, Mark Young? Are you saying in this position, rook f7? I'm going to cheat and say what does the engine say to rook f7? Is there a move here? No, apparently that's okay as well. Rook f7. In fact, that might be one of the best moves. Okay, rook takes f7. Check.
Check.
Queen h6. We've got bishop f4 check all the time.
Check.
Takes. King takes. Check.
Check.
Apparently black's okay. Rook f7 might actually be the strongest move. Let's go back to the game on that. So apparently rook f7. Wow. Rook f7. It was here. Rook f7. So we had to rule out several defensive tries. Getting rook f7 here. Rook f7 might be the most solid, in fact. It needs a lot of research, this position. Is it going to be played? He's thinking about it. I think he's out of his book. He must be out of his book. So what do you guys think will actually be played? Do you think it will be rook f7, or will it be a disaster move, this next move? I think we can consider queen f6 near disaster for king at b1. b4 definite disaster for knight e4. Okay, let's just check while we're in suspense there. Let's just check what's happening here. It's complicated. White's technically a pawn up here. Gelfand's technically a pawn up, but these double pawns don't look too pleasant at all at the moment anyway. What has happened? Sutovsky has got e4 on the cards here. So what happened here? We had, instead of the very exciting gambit with b4, we had c3. And then this bishop was pointing at a1. So knight takes b4 for e4. Does that actually work? Oh, hang on, I think we've had some moves somewhere. We've had rook f7. Rook f7 has been played. Very tense position, leaving that bishop unpraised. Very good to find these sort of moves. I think you have to be playing only moves in the dragon then, not to be slayed. So rook f7 seems potentially might have been one of the only moves, but it actually might leave black with an advantage if this h-file doesn't lead to anything. So rook takes f7. So king takes. Will there be a check? The thing is, the king is actually being carnivorous here.
Check.
If we have a look at this position with queen h6, the king is unbelievably carnivorous after
Check.
bishop f4, the drag and drop tactic to win the rook. So I wouldn't join the party too soon with queen h6 here. And this bishop's still hanging. So what do? Maybe we don't want to play this check. Is there a move which is better than the check? What about just bishop e4? Bishop e4 has been played. Just as I was saying it, bishop e4, in fact. So bishop e4 keeps tension going. But queen f6, maybe? Queen f6 creates bishop f4 again. Mind you, this bishop's loose on d7. I'm not entirely sure that's a big deal. Throwing in the check again,
check.
We're leaving this kind of threat here. I think we have to do better than rook h7. So queen f6 played. Not sure, because it looks as though black is ganging up things. Maybe b4 is coming, or a3, even worse, a3, just to undermine this knight. Dangerous. So rook. What does our engine say here? King b1. Rook b8. I wonder what's wrong with a3. Let's just try a3 here. Check.
Check.
King e8. Knight e2. Is that threatening f4? So if we took here, f4 is actually crushing in this position. Very tricky to navigate this stuff. King b1 has been played. So apparently a3, which seems to be entirely logical to undermine the knight, can be answerable with knight e2 to, believe it or not, undermine the bishop, protecting d6, to be able to get in this f4 move, for rook h7 to be more effective, because then we'll crash through with queen takes d6. So this ends up like being a pawn sacrifice to get this f4 in to try and undermine d6 here. It's being parried. The h-file pressure has been parried instead with rook h8. I think we can try, now that the pressure's gone from c3, well, maybe we can just take and then play f4. We can get into an endgame, which I'm not sure is that favourable. If we want to try and keep the fun in the position, we can try rook f1 to be able to play f4. Surely we can try this, just to be able to undermine d6 like this. I think there's always bishop f4 now, but actually we can have queen d3 and we can attack on both sides, and we've still got, you know, knight e2 and rook d1. We can switch our attention to the structure issues, d6 and b5. I think rook f1 keeps the fun in the position a little bit. I'm not sure about any rook exchange. This is just looking as though black's got loads of play here. I'll probably think, I'm sort of leaning for bishop f1. I mean rook f1. What do you guys think about rook f1 here as a practical try? Rook f1. I think that's a fantastic piece. If we can try and dislodge it with f4, mind you, it's not even threatening because this is loose, isn't it? It's a pin. We'd have to like protect the rook after. That's maybe queen d3, protecting the rook to actually threaten f takes. Rook f1. The engines think here. Given rook takes h8, that might be the theoretically best move, but it seems to be there's no fun in it. If we have this position, is there any fun here for white? a3. Suppose it gives the king a2 for this check.
Check.
So a3 would be important here. Black's slightly better apparently. Queen h4 would seem to be designed against f4. If we like allowed f4, I think, pardon me, let's give a token move. Oh, bishop takes g6. No, I mean queen h4, okay. But what's wrong with this f4? Let's go back to the game for a moment, position, and consider rook f1. If we played rook f1, is that so terrible? a3, apparently, yeah, this looks nasty. If we go with knight e2 here, right now, let's not consider b4, let's consider just if black took, then f4. Let's try and see if this has any effect here. This would be okay for white, apparently, but black is not obliged to take on b2 here. Anyway, so white has taken on h8. So I guess a3 becomes really important here. Oh, knight d1, not a3. This can lead to what seems to be a naughty pin, queen h1. Isn't that a naughty pin? I mean, things like bishop f4 now might happen. Trying to use the pin. Is this pin at all useful? I wonder. Or what about a3 here? The bishop and the queen are putting pressure on that diagonal. a3 seems useful. Actually, the knight might be heading for f2. It might be worth pinning it. If it gets to f2, then knight g4 might be quite painful for black. In conjunction with a3 and a knight planned to g4. d5. We would have to consider bishop d5 there, but I guess that's been ruled out. Bishop d3 has been played quickly. I don't suppose there was anything that white's running out of pieces there. Bishop d3 then, okay. But that has loosened the bishop on e5, so this plan is, if it can take effect, is more effective. Getting a knight here is hitting e5 all the time. That pawn was adding some solidity to the bishop. Where else can the knight reroute? If it reroutes to e3, it gets pinned, potentially. So it goes to f2. So I think a3 and knight f2 would seem good ideas in the circumstance, especially as black might be considering a3 as well. So a3 dual purpose. Give the king a square. Support knight f2. Without this, knight f2 does stop the check anyway. But a3, king a2, that sort of thing. Okay, f4 has been prevented with this move. Queen f h4. a3 has been played. So I don't know, knight f2 looks to be an idea to get the knight to g4 if white was given another move. Queen e2 is also a nice idea, maybe for b5 to be loose here, because a3 has also fixed b5. I suppose the queen is supporting b4 from black. No, actually queen e2 hits the bishop on e5. Is a double attack on b5 and e5. That looks to be a major threat to consider here for black's next move. How does black factor in queen e2 here? There is a loose bishop. On e5 technically we've got two loose pieces at the moment, but the loose bishop on e5 is more prone to queen e2 here. Also queen, I guess queen e3, but there's always queen d4 if queen e3. So black is a pawn up here. So queen e3, queen d4 might not be that clever, given black is a pawn up. If the bishop gets out of the way with bishop g7, mind you, bishop f4. Okay, I don't know about bishop f4. Let's bishop f4, bishop g7, bishop g7, queen e2. The knight's actually holding b2, so I'm not really sure queen d4 is a big deal. What do we do about b5 here? Let's play b4 in this position. Do we want to consider c3 to stop all this? Bishop g7, what about c3? Just trying to put a break on b4. Also deprives queen d4. And d4 might be a pain. And c4. Thinking bishop g7. Is the chat working still? I'll say hi. Oh, bishop d6. So c3 has indeed been played. It's fixing this pawn a bit more. But what about d4? Ah, there's a little trap here. If take, we've got bishop takes g6, winning the queen. So no d4 here, unless there's a pawn sack. Not sure black wants to give up the pawn here. So white now might be considering queen e2 attacking b5. And then trying to put this knight, maybe even knight e3 to c2. I think knight d4, there's e5. Bishop f4 has been played. Now queen e2 just seems so natural here for attacking b5. Sorry, black's not a pawn up. Yes, I don't know why I miscounted that. Black is not a pawn up. Sorry. Equal on pawns. So queen e2 would be threatening to be a pawn up. What's wrong with queen e2 here? It has been played. Queen h1 ties the knight down for a moment. King a2. Oh, bishop c2 has been played. Now king a2, there might have been a pawn sack idea. I wonder about d4 if that was the idea. Bishop c6, we've got this pawn sack here. Or maybe not, I don't know. It's just but bishop c2 sorts out the knight for a moment. but it's not attacking b5. That's, maybe we should consider what would have happened on king a2. Was that a big problem? Let's have a quick look at this position. No, e5, e5. I think the point was d1's always a problem anyway, so e5 was apparently okay. So the bishop's like retreated. Oh, bishop's retreated to c2. Is white doing okay here? Oh, it seems that was a bit of a mistake technically. Bishop c2. Apparently king a2 from an engine point of view was preferred. So we've got this move bishop c2. It looks a bit on the passive side. It takes the pressure off b5. So can black try and, is it sort of encouraging black to sort of advance to try and exploit the weaknesses? So if black tries to advance, like for example g6, but you know, any queen d3, we've always got stuff like bishop f5 anyway. So maybe e5 isn't that weakening. Oh no, there's a check on d5. It's a check.
Check.
Maybe e5 is a big mistake here. Queen d3, g6 and d5 double attack. So if black doesn't play e5, how does black make progress? What's the engine suggestion here? Black has played e5. So what's the matter with queen d3? Queen d3? Huh? Oh, hang on. Let's sack this pawn.
Check.
This is dangerous for queen takes d1 potentially if the queen wasn't holding d1. No, I think just g4 here. Queen d3. Ah, bishop f5 has been stopped. So bishop f5 has been stopped. What was wrong with that line? Let's have a quick check on that. Queen d3. Oh, queen takes g2 apparently. So if queen takes d5,
check.
bishop e6. Right, that's looking good for black, yep. So g4 sorts out that problem, improves that relation significantly. So now the threat must be surely queen d3. So there's no bishop f5 as well, it's been ruled out. So very clever move g4. Queen d3 has been made much more effective now as a threat, without queen takes g2. So I don't know, bishop e6. Does black defend d5 in advance? Yes. Now queen d3 can go back to defend g6. No, we drop b5. That's a drop f3. No, we can't win b5 we drop f3. Okay. Queen takes b5, we drop f3. We're going to be careful here. Queen d3, do we encourage something to defend there? Maybe the queen just goes back to h6 or something. No, we've got to keep an eye on f3, otherwise we lose b5. b5 has actually been taken here. So queen takes f3. Wow, queen takes a4. Running past a pawn, but there's a running past g pawn. This is great fun. Check.
Check.
I think queen's got to get out of the way of the a pawn at some point. Knight e3. No, a4. Okay, this a pawn versus the g pawn, fundamentally, if it's not about the kings, it's about the pawns. Well, bishop f5 actually threatens queen takes d1 check here. That looks nasty. Bishop f5. I think, you know, bishop takes, we just take on d1. We're threatening queen takes d1. That looks quite nasty. If check here, check. I think just king g5. Oh, there's queen d8.
Check.
Oh, there's checks. Well, there's checks here, if nothing else. And there's
check.
Checks.
Check.
Let's put the king over here. Would there be endless checks there?
Check.
No. So this position with queen takes d1 as a threat seems dangerous. Is a4 some sort of complacent move for king safety? Very optimistic to get the pawn queening, but bishop f5 asks a specific question about king safety here. Queen takes d1 being threatened. If queen f2, we do get the pawn, we're protecting c2. Alright, that queen f2 has been ruled out in advance. So queen e2 now would seem to have the threat of bishop f5 without any queen f2. We could pin the bishop with queen b6. Is that helpful? That could be very helpful for this pawn. We'll just pin the bishop. This seems to be a useful pin, but what can black actually do here? Queen d2 is dangerous for queen c1 check. So the queen's actually come back all the way to g1, maybe stopping, maybe getting ready to defend c1 here. If queen d2, there's knight f2. Now there's bishop e3. Ah, dangerous on c1. I think knight f2 here, there's bishop e3. Oh, this is dangerous. Queen c1 is really a pain here, surely. No, I think white's toasted here, because this threat here and bishop f5, mind you, it's threatening g6. Hold on. G6 is being attacked. Bishop f5 then. Bishop f5. Okay, e4. E4. So there's a threat of queen d2. Queen, what about queen f2 here? Just, we're pinning that bishop now. Queen f2 would seem I don't know if about black pawns are getting too quick with e3. So we had this position. Do we want to protect that or do something else? Just e2. I may lost the internet connection. No. Queen d4. Okay. Is this going back anywhere? What's happening here? So this Queen g1 happened. e4 check. Queen c5. So the bishop was dragged off that sensitive diagonal. Factoring in Queen f2 all the time. No, just a5, getting the pawn ready. Queen f2 can be played at the right moment if this pawn's really dangerous. What about... So there's no e3 at the moment. This pawn seems quite some way off, and the queen's just come off a6. So a6, a7 are imminent now. Bishop f4, is that a pain in this position? I don't know, can we just sacrifice the bishop? If we go in for this sacrifice here, we get a7, and there's always a check here, and there's queen a3, and it's too dangerous for the king here. Bishop f4 has been played. Okay, so bishop b3, yes, much better. Not losing the bishop. Keeping the knight protected. e3. Oh, this pawn's now quite dangerous. Check.
Check.
Bishop f7. Ah, bishop f7. I think white's going to have to take this pawn soon. But there's a few other checks to consider. Queen check here.
Check.
Or see, there's a few checks. There's d8. It's just taking the pawn. Taking the pawn. It was pretty dangerous. If we can just get this pawn rolling without getting mated. Bishop takes d5. Oh, using the pin unexpectedly there, not the pawn. Ah,
check.
It's check. Oh, I think that's end of game. Black's won. Winning the bishop. That's end of game. Jones survived. He played the dragon with success. Wow. Okay, so that was a devastating finish there with the check winning the bishop. Let's have a look at the others then. What's happening here? So Nakamura seems to have a reasonable position. He's a pawn down technically, but yeah, it looks as though what is actually going on here? It doesn't seem Oh, pardon me. As interesting as the dragon at the moment. But let's see this one. Short against Sutovsky. Oh, this looks nasty. Aries, look, if you don't want any commentary on the games, please, don't come here. Okay, this isn't the fastest stream. Yeah, please don't keep on going on about it. I'm following the ICC relay with some commentary for those interested. No one's forcing you, okay, to come here. This game, White won this. It's a winning game position. So this game, I guess, was a draw. I think they're virtually finished anyway. So let's see the results. So Nakamura game a draw. Polgar just lost. So let's see what happened earlier in this game here. How did this disaster happen? I think Sutovsky must have been exhausted from the FIDE Open. So White does have a very solid looking position. That was a neat tactic on c5 being undermined. It's another neat tactic. Wow. Wow. Bishop takes, knight takes. And if rook takes c8 here, there's a back row issue. So bishop takes was possible with a back row issue. And if so, he had played actually bishop d4. There's rook f3, painful. Rook f3 protecting f2, gaining a key tempo.
Check.
Very tactical stuff. Oh, now going into this horrible pin.
Check.
So White's 2 pawns up. Very tactical game indeed. I didn't like the nature of this game particularly. It didn't really excite me, this Gelfand Nakamura game. Even though Nakamura was playing. Now what's happened here? in this game, what sort of disaster happened there? So knight e5.
Check. Check.
The game started already for the next round. Nope. Knight d3.
Check. 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 Check.
Dangerous pawn.
Check.
So
Check.
that one a piece there.
Check. Check.
Won the rook. Oh, that's terrible disaster. Winning the rook. Was white really losing outright here?
Check.
If we just have a look at this position, it was apparently a little bit better for black, but he goes and plays
Check.
king. So there's a threat of rook b7 winning the rook. He just blundered his rook to rook b7. So white needed to play rook h3 is a good move. Set the pawn. Could have still had a game there. That's a shame. That's the nature of rapid. Blunders are actually a double-edged sword. They're kind of fun. That's why blitz and rapid is quite fun compared to the longer time limits. So yeah, there's a lot of blunders here, but that's quite a howler to plunder the rook. So rook b is a bit of a double attack threat of rook b7. It had to be handled with rook h3. That rook b7 check. So white could have had the prospects there, but earlier in the game that seemed quite complicated. Quite a complicated game indeed. Howell's usually quite good at blitz, obviously, by normal standards. But against Caruana's playing really well, of course. Just check this out again. What time's the next round, I wonder? When it's 4:45 now. Is the next round at 6 o'clock? Does anyone know? Next round, is it at 6 o'clock? I think it is. I think the next round's at 6 o'clock. So there's an hour and 20. Oh, an hour and 15 to go for that. Right, just quickly check this again. So hypermodern, knight e8, knight e5. So black constructed that centre and he shut down the bishop on b2, but he's conceding a few light square weaknesses. White's trying to undermine that chain rapidly. Corona just took that. He's weakening a bit White's king safety, I suspect. He's isolating these pawns, maintaining just the pawn on d4.
Check. Check.
Exactly what happened here is that the pawn on d4, although it seems quite weak, it seems adequate enough at the moment. Knight d3. Surely white was a little bit better here. What's one of knight takes? I suppose just rook. What was the position evaluation here from an engine point of view? White was better here. Apparently knight d6 theoretically anyway. So he played knight d6. He took that pawn. So white does seem better. Pawn up. Something. Oh, this e-file possession is very dangerous though. With that knight on d3. So black must be in the back in the game with huge threats like knight e2, and he's just sort of stranded the rook, with the rook crashing through to the 7th soon. This looks quite dangerous for white, even though he's a pawn up. I bet you engine evaluation here is better for black. No, apparently bishop f3 sorts out a lot of issues. Was that actually played? Rook e4. Still white was better, apparently. White is better all the way through here.
Check. Check.
In theory.
Check. Check.
Starts to go wrong a bit. Maybe d4 was better there. d4. This pawn's a bit dangerous. Ah, hang on. Yeah, this pawn's a bit dangerous. Again, technically, king f3 looks scary though for g2. I guess this wasn't played. So black was better after that. If king f3, but it looks scary, g2, we've got king f2. What would be an objection to that? Knight f4? Bishop takes g2. Oh, that swallows up the pawn.
Check.
There's a king f3. That swallows up the pawn issue. So actually, it seemed scary, but king f3 for king f2 and bishop takes g2. So in the game, actually, we saw king here.
Check.
And black winning the first piece.
Check.
So that was entirely unnecessary, it seems, from an engine point of view. It seems in this position, king f3, and white was +3 here, believe it or not. Look at that, +3 seems terrifying. The sort of positions that engines entertain without sweating too much. So g2, king f2, holding the pawn, and just bishop takes g2 here is a carnivorous king. So a critical moment there. Critical wrong direction for the king. King f3. That's fascinating, how to convert a winning position. Because ideally, you know, white's got some trumps here. Rook on the 7th, you know. Black's only trump card is this pawn, and if that can be tactically eliminated, but it takes some foresight to see this position. Why bishop takes g2? I mean, that's just killing. If we just sanity check this, so knight takes. We've got king g3. I think king g1 as well, but king g3 even better. Just getting the material back. That's a shame. It was Hell's good chance. He had a winning position here. +3. +3. This is Black's last hope. But it does seem... These endgames are just fascinating. These tactical, you know, positions in endgames are really quite fascinating. Do you not think that this position's winning here? I mean, we could try knight. I suppose we could try knight h4. You know, for rook h1. We can always play bishop takes g2 when there's rook h1. What's the best move for white here? Just carry on snapping up. And if rook h1, we just play bishop takes g2. If rook h2 here, king g3. Again, carnivorous king. Yeah, whatever way you look at this, it seems as though... Okay, I think cooking. I'm going to be back at 6. I'm going to be back soon. So see you at... I think the next round's at 6. Yeah? I'm going to have dinner now, and I'll be back shortly, probably a few minutes before. I believe the next round's at 6. So, be back in less than an hour. I'm just going to go and eat. So, round 6... we will see Michael Adams playing Vichy Anand, I think. Matthew Sadler against Vidler. Istrasescu against Luke McShane. Ralston against Kramnik. I think these endings are really worthy of study. I might get into dynamic endings. Just studying them for a laugh. But this is just one position, you know, if you've got all these trump cards, it just seems to be quite painful not to be able to win this sort of position. Pass pawns add a lot of fun, I think, to chess, of course, in the endgames. They make endings a lot of fun. And they create anxiety and tension, mistakes in handling them. So that was Carolina's chance, that pawn, which he used with great effect. So it's 16:54 now in UK time. So I think the next round's at 6. Okay. This is the Internet Chess Club, a relay I'm using, so that's why it's a bit delayed. Hope you got something out of it. Okay. Did I cover any game insufficiently in retrospect, though? Just before I think I'll wait till I get called. Let's just see something else. Hold on a sec. This game I didn't really get. I was a bit biased because I thought it was a bit on the dull side. If we should really inspect this, despite it might have been a little bit dull. I'll wait until I actually have to go down for a sec. So Boris is probably trying to take the position onto strategical orientation away from Nakamura's strengths, like tactical. He didn't mind the exchange of queens.
Check.
And what I thought was plausible actually here was king takes d1, and that wasn't really played. Let's just check with an engine here. It seems knight takes d1 is stronger. So what was wrong with king takes d1? Oh, f2 is an immediate issue. That's a right pain. And if e3, so black's already doing quite well. It can even sack a pawn here. And
check.
Yeah, this just looks better for black, it seems. This position. So knight takes d1, and it seems white didn't get much out of... Well, he's got his small edge or something that he wanted. He played knight e3, and apparently knight takes c4 was interesting as well. Knight e3. Knight e6. No, that wasn't played in the game. Knight d7 was played in the game. So it was sort of symmetrical. Sometimes these games do turn me off. The symmetrical pawn structures switch me off, to be honest. So white's got a small edge, an extra pawn for the double pawns.
Check. Check. Check.
And it's just drawing
Check.
soon now. So if white had played, there's
Check.
nothing else white can do here without incurring serious disadvantage. If king g2, you know, taking here, or is that the strongest, or something else? There's actually rook d5 as well, apparently. If knight takes,
Check.
well, it's not a big deal. Yeah, it seems, okay. Yeah, that was the dullest game, I think, of the round from what I've seen. Alright, so see you in a bit. Yeah, I think I'm going to see you in a bit. Okay, thanks for coming. See you in about 45 minutes. I might start before the thing. I'm going to go and eat. See you later.